I'm Karen Colligan, and welcome to the Let's Talk Leadership podcast. So why do I care about leadership? As the founder of PeopleThink, and in my tenure as a leader, as a consultant, and as a coach, I've certainly seen my share of very good leaders and my share of very bad leaders. And I thought it'd be great to share the wisdom from the very good leaders, hence the Let's Talk Leadership podcast. You're going to hear from a variety of leaders who are in a variety of roles, sharing their leadership expertise by answering the same 6 questions. Every single leader is unique in their style and approach, and we want to capture that uniqueness and provide you, the listener, with a diverse way of looking at leadership. So let's get moving and talk to our next leadership guest. In this episode, I am thrilled to be speaking to Nishita Roy Pope, who is the founder and CEO of World Rue and Tribe Academy. We're going to hear all about Nishita's approach to leadership. So Nishita, welcome and thank you for being with us today.
Thank you so much, Karen. So happy to be here.
Yeah, it's exciting. All righty, Nishita, before we do anything, tell us a little bit about who you are, and then give us a snapshot of World Rue and Tribe Academy. And then we'll get into our leadership conversation.
Yes, sure. So as you said, I'm Nishita Roy Pope. I have a very multifaceted background. I've spent 10 years as a corporate leader working at Fortune 50 company Dell Technologies. I transitioned last year to become a full-time founder and CEO of the 2 organizations you mentioned, World Rue and Tribe Academy. World Rue is an early education brand, and we are launching with our first product, which is a children's learning app for ages 3 to 6. And that is really meant to help provide kids with exposure to the skills of today and tomorrow. So the basics around early learning fundamentals, but also to get them exposed to topics around STEM and problem solving and global cultures, and make sure that they are really prepared for being great citizens in the world, as they grow up. Tribe Academy is an organization that is committed to advancing talent diversity in business and tech. We have trained over 450 students through our programs and connected them to some of the biggest companies in the world, where many of them are working today. And we also have programs focused on other diverse groups, including women, and making sure that they are getting the skills and tools to be thriving, in the mid-career point to help them get to that next level. I'm also a mom. I have 2 young kids, so that's a very big part of my life. I'm married. I live in Rhode Island, the small but mightiest state we have in the US. And in my free time, I spend a lot of time mentoring, coaching others. I'm on the board of 2 nonprofit organizations, both with a focus on young people and helping them, build confidence and skills. I like to have fun. I'm a little bit goofy, a little bit silly, try not to take myself too seriously. And yeah, that's a little bit about me and the 2 organizations.
Wow. Nishita, when do you sleep is what I want to know.
I don't. I'm working on that. That's a goal for 2023.
Okay, that can be something you think about. Okay, eventually. Oh, I'm so excited. This is going to be great. And, it's interesting. You say that you have a multifaceted background. Well, that's kind of putting it mildly. And then you think about you're starting 2 organizations, plus you're a mom. So you have 3 full-time jobs. And when you think about the 3 full-time jobs, every one of them is about leadership. I mean, you can't navigate without being certain about who you are as a leader. So I know we're going to have a really great dynamic conversation. You know me and I know you. We're both a little goofy and like to laugh. So I'd say this is going to be a good one. It's so great. So let's get into the first question, Nishita. There's so many ways to define leadership, and it's so personal to each individual. And that you will be my 34th leader that I have had this conversation with. And I promise you, every single one is a little bit different, but they're so personal. So do tell, how do you define leadership?
Leadership to me is really the ability to empower and inspire others to achieve the best version of themselves and their capabilities. And I think that second part of that sentence is what is very important. What I've learned as a leader is that it's not about getting everyone to the same level necessarily, but it's about unlocking everyone's individual talents, their passions, understanding what motivates them, and being able to create a personalized plan and support system to make sure that they thrive. So that's for me how I would define it. And the other very important piece to me when I think about leadership is that it is a earned privilege
Mm-hmm.
and a responsibility. And I think that part also gets lost sometimes, that we are sometimes put in the positions, maybe we haven't earned the right to be there, but once we are there, that we need to understand that there is a responsibility that comes with it, and I take that very seriously.
We being mature in our careers, meaning that we've had multifaceted, as to use your word, is that we've come across people who are in leadership roles and believe because they are a leader, therefore you will listen to me. And what's the natural, course of events after that? As soon as someone says you will, what's everybody going to do? Say, no, we won't. And so I love the idea about being earned. It's an earned privilege, and it is a privilege to be a leader. And some people love being leaders, Nishita, and some people are like, oh, run the other way. I'm fine with that. As long as people recognize that when you are a leader, you do have certain responsibilities. Great. Empower and inspire. Yes, yes, yes. All right, we'll move on to question 2 in terms of values. So when I think about leadership, I think about the importance of self-awareness and the importance of taking time to really think through, like, who am I as a human being? And how do I facilitate that humanness into my leadership role? So values to me are just, it's the guiding light. It's how I'm going to make good decisions. It's how I'm going to make all decisions, whether they're easy or hard. And I might even make bad decisions, but if it's based on my values, then at least I can sleep at night. So what are your top 3 values as a leader?
I'm glad you asked this question because it gave me time to pause and reflect and really think about what my 3 values are. So for me, the 3 would be empathy, courage, and integrity. And the reason I've chosen those values, empathy is, as you said, if we can't connect on a human level and understand people, what motivates them, what worries them, their purpose in the world, like I don't even know, why we're existing. To me, that's the root of everything. And the more we take time to understand people very deeply and personally, I think most problems in the world can be solved truthfully. And so for me, that empathy, and I think part of what goes along with that too, from a leadership perspective, is to give people grace to make mistakes. I think that's a very big part about being an empathetic leader, understanding people's life circumstances and situations and making sure that we can be flexible with them. So that's the empathy for me.
And let me just make one comment about that, which I love what you just said in terms of, giving people grace. We all have a life. And when we come to work, we can't say, okay, I'm opening the door, whether figuratively or real, and say, okay, I'm going to leave everything behind me because my life is there. But I'm going to walk in the door now, my hat's on, I'm ready to go. It's impossible. And so our life will bleed into every part of our work. And if leaders don't expect that, then there's trouble in the okay corral, if you will. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Grace is beautiful. Okay, tell us a little bit about courage.
So courage for me, that is really the boldness and confidence to innovate, right? Leadership is about having that vision and ability to kind of see the next horizon, whatever scope of work that you might have. It's the courage to advocate for your team and make sure that they're getting the resources and support and opportunities that they deserve. It's the courage to have those hard conversations, which we have to have many of as a leader, and the courage to fail yourself as a leader, but also, again, to make sure that your team understands that that is okay, that we can, take risks and that there are going to be shortcomings and that we can learn from them and improve. So that to me is really what courage stands for in leadership.
Yeah. And as a leader, I mean, you're a role model. So if you can fail and be gracious to yourself, then you are giving permission to your team to be able to fail and be gracious to themselves as well as you being gracious to them. And often I will say, stuff runs downhill. And as a leader, people are always watching, even when you think they're not watching. And so if you can fail and still keep your head held high, wow, that's a huge lesson for the team.
And I think building on that, Karen, because we are role models, that the courage to be vulnerable and to share our own shortcomings or personal challenges. I think a lot of the time, especially in corporate settings, leaders might feel that they have to put on this facade that they have it all figured out and that they're not facing, hardship, or that they haven't had, very serious personal things happening that they're trying to, mitigate when they come into work. And I think the more we can show that we too are going through that and understand it, that goes back to the empathy. But that's the courage piece that I haven't seen happen as much. I think we're starting the pandemic normalized a lot of the vulnerability because we didn't have a choice, because we were
Yes.
inside of everyone's home. But
Yes.
the more we can, show through our own actions and that we too are facing real life situations, I think that really does help set the tone for a team.
When you talk about vulnerability, lots of people will think that that's a weakness. And for me, I think it is the greatest strength someone can have because back to our earlier conversation, we're all human.
Hmm.
And to be able to articulate it and be able to own it is again a lesson as a role model to our team. It's okay, we are human. Who would believe, Nishita, we're human? Yeah, exactly. Okay, great. Now talk about integrity.
So integrity, for me, this is the core of our whatever business we run. This is, delivering great products, making sure we're great at servicing our customers, being trustworthy in our relationships, that part. But I think that's the expected part that I would hope we all share in business. But to me, it's also the integrity to be transparent about the state of our business and maybe the economic or other factors that are, facing us, to be truthful and realistic with our teams, and to take them along on the journey with us. Again, that vulnerability piece, the integrity, and it's about doing what's right even when it's hard. And that means doing what's right for our customers, doing what's right for our team members, doing what's right for our community, doing what's right when it comes to topics of diversity, equity, and inclusion. But that integrity piece, if we do not have that, then again, I do not think we deserve to be in leadership. To me, that is part of that responsibility, that earned privilege, that we also have to demonstrate integrity. And we've seen, I think, in the news, many examples of, when the integrity is not there, how things quickly fall apart.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah, and we could be on that subject all day long. The Keep It Real program, the center of our model is integrity. And one of the ways that I think about integrity is when you do the right thing when no one is looking.
Hmm.
And you mentioned your customers and your customers, yourself, your family, your team. I mean, we could go on and on. And are we all perfect? No, of course not. And for me, integrity with the Keep It Real program is the foundation. And then we have pillars around integrity. But if integrity is not there, just as you indicated, nothing else really matters, because
Hmm.
why would I believe you, Nishita, if I didn't trust you? So love that. Great. Thank you. All right. All right. So this is a new question I've decided I'm going to add in. So what is the best advice you ever were given by a leader? And it's a hard question because of course, we've been around great, wonderful leaders, but what do you think is the best?
The advice that it's applied to me as a leader, but also in my career, and I think the two are related, is that the best advocate for you is you. And I
Mm,
think this is very important because for a long time, and especially before I became a leader, I assumed it was my leader's job to open doors or create opportunities or make sure that I was getting the pay that I thought I deserved, or whatever it was. And I think my approach was very reliant on others.
Mhm.
But then becoming a leader and just growing in my own career, not only have I learned how to advocate for myself, but also learned, to teach others how to do it. I have played my role in
Yeah.
advocating as a leader, but I think more importantly, my purpose has been to help empower others to
Mhm.
understand that they too are capable. A large part of why I believe people are capable of advocating, as you heard in the beginning, I have two little kids,
Yeah.
and they are super advocates for themselves. Like, you try negotiating with a toddler, and you will lose every time. So the beautiful part is that all of us intrinsically knew how to advocate for ourselves at one point in time, but it's just about reconnecting with that skill
Mhm.
set and understanding that the universe is not going to just provide for you because you want it to, but that we have control over our destiny and our paths. And I think the more we can instill that in people, especially a lot of the work I do is around women and people of
Mhm.
color who often lack that confidence, or they've been told they don't deserve it. The more I can equip them with those that tools to advocate, I think we're going to be better off as a business community, as a society.
Agree. And, equipping, we'll go back to what you said in the very beginning about your definition of leadership. Empower and inspire were two of the words that you use.
Hmm.
And so, there's a nice full circle there that really talks about what you had learned and how now you're taking that learning and you're bringing it along to the two organizations that you now have started and are running. It's really about advocacy. Yeah. Okay, so we're currently going through an enormous amount of transition and change. And, the past 2.5 years have been kind of cuckoo. And so between the global pandemic and the social awakening and the economic implication of both, because there has been some, how do you lead through transition and change, Nishita?
So I'll tell you, I became a leader in title. I became a director at Dell, in a major corporation, just 3 months before the pandemic. So the majority of my time
Wow.
as a leader was through the pandemic,
Oh, gee.
which offered me a lot of tests. At first, I felt like it was very unfair that I had to have this first experience being a leader at such a tumultuous time, that in a time that none of us could have
Know what?
predicted, none of us were ready for, right? And that I had to kind of figure it out. But I realized that I had many advantages as a new leader because I didn't have to unlearn years and years of maybe bad behavior or former ways of doing things.
Mhm.
Like, I only had to adapt to what was happening in that moment, and I didn't have all this baggage that I had
Yes.
to
Yes.
leave and start doing things the new way,
Yeah.
right? So in many ways, I feel like I was a lot more adaptable and agile
Um,
because I was a new leader.
yeah.
And so that was a really big blessing in the end. But what I would say, and also now as a full-time founder, that's a whole life transition. I
Yes.
went from a very stable, predictable, comfortable life
Yeah.
in a corporate setting to a every day I don't know what's going to happen, and it's
Right.
always chaotic and very stressful life as an entrepreneur.
Yes, it is.
But in both cases, I would say at the core, how I approach transition goes back to the three values we said
Mm,
for myself that I believe at the beginning.
mhm.
Empathy allows me to make sure that I'm considering how are my team members feeling during this transition, and to listen more. And I do believe that if we take time to listen more, although we might not be able to eliminate the disruption or the turbulence or the stress, usually there are solutions that our team members can provide that can at least help lessen the the stress for them. And so the more we can do that, I believe it's helpful. When I became a director, some of the things my team told me, little things like they just wanted some personal days, like have more time, just to have time, a mental health break or mental health support. And these were not part of our formal systems. But
Right.
because I took the time to listen, and for me, I looked at the cost benefit, that there was not really a downside to me allowing my team to have a little bit more time for themselves during the course of a week or a month, like those were easy decisions for me to implement that really meant a lot to them.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
the only way I got there was by listening and being very empathetic to their needs.
Yeah.
In terms of courage, so I think the natural reaction when things are uncertain during times of transition is we want to be safe. We don't want to take risk, right? We don't
Yes.
want to make big moves. Like that is a natural reaction because we don't know what's going to happen. And even right now, much of the news is suggesting we're about to go into, financial downturn, and we see the layoffs happening, and it's very troubling. As an entrepreneur in this market, I'm definitely nervous. A lot of people are, warning me that there's not a lot of capital to, get for my company, that, investors are very wary, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm definitely nervous, but then I have to go back to what I've seen happen time and time again, is that if we don't ask, we don't get a yes. So even in times of uncertainty, we have to be bold, and whether that's for our business, whether that's to make sure our team has the support that they need, that courage has to still maintain, even though everything suggests to you that you should lay low and take the safest route possible. And then from an integrity perspective, again, I think this is the time when things can get compromised, right? Like quality of service, our commitment to the product, the focus on the team's well-being, like all of those things seem like they're the first to go when times are uncertain. But I think that's why we have to double down on the integrity part. That's going back to doing what's right, even when it's hard, and to be very transparent about our teams, about what is happening. So that integrity piece, I think it escalates in importance, or it elevates even more in times of transition than it does in normal times.
Oh, absolutely. And then I'll go back to that other thing that we had talked about in terms of stuff runs downhill. And so people are watching, and they're watching to see if you're doing what you say you're going to do, if you still have that advocacy for yourself and your two companies, and making sure that you're continuing to move them forward. So, this fear factor that I'll just say media, conversations with business leaders, those kinds of things, no one can predict it. And so what we as entrepreneurs have to do from a leadership perspective, and I feel very strongly about this, is that we have to hold our ground. You use the word bold. That's one of our pillars within the Keep It Real leadership program, because this is the time that the people who do not have the courage, do not have the boldness, do not have the integrity, do not have the empathy, I'll just use your words, Nishita, will not make it. And so we have to hold on because of our belief system around that whole integrity piece. So transition and change, people get scared, and all of a sudden it's all about me. It's all about me. It's all about me. And that's what people care about. So I think around the whole conversation going out in this world, that whole gray area, nobody knows. And so we have to hold on to our belief system and continue from a business perspective to be very, very practical and very methodical about how we continue to move our businesses forward.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, love it. Okay, so we know that the best leaders are curious and they're always learning. So what tools do you use to continually grow and develop?
Yeah, so here's the truth. I'll tell you that I feel that my personal development time is always interrupted. So what I have learned to do is to find short bursts of development for myself, because the 8-hour training for me is just like not happening.
Gone.
Yes. Not happening, or I'm not paying attention. I just see my brain and my time being strained at all moments. So what I've learned is, how do I get what I need, but in a way that is consumable for my life at this moment.
Yes.
And so I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn, not just posting and browsing, but I take it from a very academic lens. I'm looking at how people position their brands or talk about their businesses. And I really look at the structure and approach people take in building their brand and creating their thought leadership and credibility. And I often apply that to my own my own brand. But what I find myself doing is someone will post about a really interesting Harvard Business Review article or a study, and I'll find myself kind of going,
Yes.
into one link, into another link, into another
Yeah.
link, and so I kind of get my consumption of information
Yes.
by following the path of some of the leaders I really respect, on
Mm-hmm.
LinkedIn.
Mm-hmm.
I also am a fan. There's one podcast in particular that I find to be very helpful to me in keeping my diversity, equity, and inclusion lens strong. It's called Brown Table Talk, and it's about women of color in the workplace, but the messaging is really around how to engage allies. And I find that to be very helpful because it puts language to help me when I'm working with populations who maybe haven't fully embraced the importance of DEI, or don't necessarily understand why it applies to their organization. It gives me vocabulary and tactics that I can use with some of my consulting engagements that I have. So I find that to be very helpful.
And that also, Nishita, goes back
Sure.
to your advocacy, your self-advocacy, that we have to take care of ourselves. That's
Absolutely.
another learning tool. Great. Love it.
Absolutely. And those are 20 minutes, right? So for me, it's something I drop my kids to school, and on the way back to my house, which is about 30 minutes, like I listen to that.
Yeah.
So I found that to be one of my like weekly rituals. YouTube has become my friend for this past week. I watched a bunch of videos on what are the top questions investors are going to ask you when you go pitch for venture capital. So I'm like watching all these experts, say what are the questions, how to respond to them, what not to say, etc. So YouTube is amazing. And finally, the last thing, which I try to be very intentional about, and I have been this way for a long time, is to make time for networking and to be strategic and thoughtful about folks who can help me. Either they're entrepreneurs, they have corporate leadership, maybe they're women I really admire, maybe they have a skill set that I'm looking to build. But I try to get out of my house at least a few times a month and go have a real coffee, not a virtual coffee where there's no coffee being consumed, a real coffee, and go out into the world and do that. But also make time for virtual networking. The beauty right now of our lifestyle is that we can access people anywhere. So I often find myself meeting people that I connected with on LinkedIn, or that I met with briefly at an event, and we have that follow-on conversation. Or even me and you, Karen, the reason we're having this conversation is because we've reconnected. So I realize that I gain my energy and my innovation from people. That human interaction is what really sparks me and makes me feel excited about what's in front of me. So that's a very big part of how I develop myself.
Wow, that's a lot. That's good. And I love, that you talk about it. It's like those blurbs, if you will. It's those 20 minutes. It's that micro learning. It's because our brains are, moving at all times, and we have to make sure that we're paying attention. So why listen to an hour and a half podcast if you're only really hearing 20 minutes of it? So that definitely makes sense. And I love the idea, as wonderful as all the Zoom technology is, and it's great. And for me, I call it the whites of the eyes. Like, there is nothing better for me when I am in front of somebody. I see the whites of their eyes. We can talk, we can laugh, we can carry on and get the work done. And it sparks. Like, I'm so much smarter, Nishita, when I'm with people. I'm like, where did that come from? So yeah, it just, for me, it's really important. And we have this wonderful tool called Zoom, YouTube, all those other things where we can consume great knowledge. LinkedIn, the same thing. Yeah, love it. Okay. So this last question is, what piece of art or music or literature or whatever else keeps you balanced and brings you joy? And so for me, joy is the word I'm going for. So what's bringing you joy, Miss Nishita?
I'm glad you focused on joy, because the balance part is an interesting concept that I aspire to know what that means one day, because I don't know what it means today. But the joy part, so really that comes from spending time with my family. Like my kids are high energy all the time, 24/7. So we just spend a lot of time playing outdoors, or just, being silly or playing board games. But those little moments to me are extremely meaningful, and they make me happy. And, it lets me separate from all of the other very complex things happening in my life to just like be there with them. So that to me is enough. But also I spend a lot of time coaching and mentoring others. And again, that inspiring, empowering, paying it forward, it gives me fulfillment when I see someone that I've played a small role in their career journey going on and thriving, or that piece of advice I've given them has translated into something meaningful for their career, or that the help I gave them negotiating, that they've actually gotten the pay raise, or the connection I made to them at A, B, or C company has led to a job. Like those moments for me matter a lot. So I spend a lot of time officially through Tribe Academy in particular doing it, but also informally. I just naturally enjoy
Yes.
supporting people on their journeys. And then the last part I would say that gives me joy is finding time to innovate. And I've found that as an entrepreneur, I have more of that time.
Mm-hmm.
I was able to find space within corporate. I wouldn't say it was necessarily provided to me. I think I just forced it to happen because it's important to me. But especially for WorldRoo, because we're building a technology product for kids, I'm always looking at what my kids consume on TV and like, how do I get ideas? I literally save all of my son's first grade worksheets that he comes from school, and I'm looking at them to see what concepts is he learning and how could I gamify this into an experience that would make sense in my app. I'm just always paying attention to out in the world, and I really that gives me joy to know that I could take something that exists in the world and then put it into this technology experience for a kid to help them be a better citizen and better human being. So that really gives me joy. I like connecting ideas and people and making them into something tangible that we could actually utilize.
I love that your kids are your researchers. I mean, what's better than having your demographic right there in front of you to be able to see it 24/7?
Yeah. And it's funny because I should have launched several years ago. And so I felt like I was behind, but now I realize it's a blessing because had I launched a few years ago, my kids wouldn't have been in the demographic. They would have been too young, but now they're exactly in the age group that we're targeting. So they are my, built-in focus group. I ask them all the time to test stuff and for ideas, or even when they don't like things in my product and they like something more, and I'm asking them, why do you like the other thing more? Right. So
exactly.
I'm understanding the competition through them too, which is a little bit of a, ego bruising for me, but it's very valuable. And the other thing I'm hoping in this year, I'm not hoping, I'm intentionally working on is to to be more physically fit. So I'm trying to go to the gym more. I've been going. I plan to run a 10-mile road race. I ran the same one last year after 8 years of not having really done anything. So I hope to do that again. I write my goals on my mirror. I added yesterday to the mirror to drink more water. I didn't put it in a quantity, just like in a single day, I don't drink water almost ever. So the message was just drink water, like whatever amount that is, just do it.
Well, yeah, but remember the question was joy, Nishita, joy.
Well, the balance part. Yeah. Yeah, the joy. Water is probably not going to give me joy, but I need to.
Or the running may not give you joy. However, when you put on those pants and they zip better,
yes,
that's joy.
Finishing the race though gives me joy. My kids seeing me work hard towards a goal, like that part gives me The actual like training part does not give me joy at all.
Oh, that's fabulous. Love, love, love it. Well, wow. Well, thank you, Nishita, so much for your insights and thoughts about leadership today and many other things. It's always so inspiring for me to hear what's going on. And as you mentioned, you and I know each other from a few years back. So to see your transition is just really beautiful. And to see your enthusiasm, and there is no doubt. I mean, look out, is what I have to say, because it's really going to happen. There's no question about that. WorldRoo and Tribe Academy is on its way, is what I
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. So we're grateful for all your words. And so with that said, everyone, thanks for listening. I'm Karen Colligan, and you've been listening to Nishita Roy Pope, the founder and CEO of WorldRoo and Tribe Academy. Pay attention to those two. And if this leadership podcast was of interest to you, go to your YouTube channel, People Think SF, and look at all the other distinguished leaders I've had the pleasure of interviewing. You're going to learn so much about the uniqueness of leadership. I know I have. And don't forget to share it with all your colleagues. Until the next episode of the Let's Talk Leadership podcast, have a good one. And don't forget to keep it real. Music by Podington Bear and editing by Marylee Williams. Thanks so much, everybody. We'll see you soon. Bye now.